Many years ago, in the ancient kingdom of Ibuji, nestled between two villages, there lived a king named King Adebanji. King Adebanji was a very upright and just king who reigned with wisdom and justice. His people loved and respected him, and his reign was marked by prosperity and peace. King Adebanji was blessed with only one child, a son named Prince Adedayo. After Prince Adedayo's birth, the queen tried to conceive other children, but to no avail. After so many years of trying and hoping for another child, they resigned to fate. Soon enough, some group of chiefs, spearheaded by his closest ally Chief Abiodun, suggested that since his wife was unable to bear him more children, he should pick any maiden from the kingdom and remarry so as for him to have more children. King Adebanji courteously rejected their suggestion and told them that though they were speaking from a place of genuine love for him, he had decided that no matter what, he was going to marry only one wife. "My king, may you live long, but think about this suggestion properly. We know you love your wife, the queen, no doubt, but it has never been heard of in the history of Ibuji kingdom that a king would have only one child," Chief Amuso said politely to the king, while beckoning on the others to throw in their support and speak up so as not to be the only one talking. And they all supported him. But King Adebanji was a strong-willed man, as he had made his decision and stood by it. The king's wife, Queen Morenike, was a very kind-hearted woman who respected and adored her king. She supported him in all he did. In fact, she was his #1 cheerleader. The people of Ibuji loved Queen Morenike for her simplicity and humility. King Adebanji and Queen Morenike nurtured and cared for their only child with love. King Adebanji started teaching Prince Adedayo how to lead with wisdom from a very tender age. Adedayo always looked up to his father as he loved his leadership skills and tenacity when faced with difficult situations. When Adedayo turned 11, he would sit close to his father when he settled conflicts among villagers with so much wisdom, so much so that the people that had once had grudges among themselves while entering the palace left the palace happy and satisfied with his judgment, as they would genuinely reconcile and settle their differences. Adedayo would watch his father closely with keen interest as he settled each crisis brought to him one after the other. "I want to be as brave as you are when I grow up," Adedayo said to his father one evening after he had watched him settle yet another crisis that was brought to him. "My dear son, life is in phases. You are just 11, yet you possess great wisdom and empathy which children your age lack. I am proud of you, and I am rest assured that you would even be braver than I am," he said, smiling. "And when I am gone, I am rest assured that you would rule with fairness and equity," King Adebanji said, while patting Adedayo's back reassuringly. King Adebanji was a very peaceful man who hated war and believed in peaceful conflict resolution. But when other kingdoms continually threatened the peace of Ibuji kingdom, he would accept their challenge, not wanting them to conquer his people. He would arrange his warriors, led by Chief Abiodun, the chief warrior, who had risen through the ranks due to his intelligence and loyalty to the king over the years. thereby earning the king's trust as his most trusted ally. King Adebanji confided in Chief Abiodun in sensitive matters that bothered him, and they became more like brothers. Chief Abiodun always went to war and never failed to come back victorious, as he was a great and skillful fighter. But unknown to the king, Chief Abiodun became envious of him, and as his envy and jealousy grew towards the king, he became covetous, as he wanted to sit on the throne of the king. His ambition grew like poison. It began to consume him. He went to one of the strongest native doctors in a faraway land to seek for power and protection. Chief Abiodun was fortified by the native doctor. After the fortification was carried out on him, his confidence grew. He decided that since he was the king's most trusted ally, he would strike one day when he least expected it. One cold, dark night, Chief Abiodun invaded the king's palace with two other warriors whom he had brought over to his side after promising them power, position and wealth, because he knew that he could not do it alone. When they got to the palace, they caught the security guards unaware as they fought with their sword and killed all the security guards that were at the strategic corners of the palace, because they were very familiar with the palace settings. King Adebanji heard the chaotic sound and unease going on inside the palace. He ran out of his inner chambers, his heart racing in confusion as he thought of what the issue could be. When he got into the palace, he saw his security guards slaughtered on the floor like chickens, and fear gripped him. He reached out for a sword. As he was about to go find out what was happening, to his relief, he saw his friend Chief Abiodun standing inside the palace, as his apprehension was replaced with a little relief. "My chief, thank God you are here. What is going on outside the palace? Why are all my men on the floor?" he asked with worry and concern. "Hope everything is under control now." As he spoke, Chief Abiodun did not say a word. Chief Abiodun's eyes darkened, his ambition to be king overpowering his mind. Chief Abiodun finally raised his head, his eyes meeting the gaze of the concerned king. He drew out his sword as his two accomplices walked into the palace. It still didn't add up to the king, as he wondered what was going on. "Chief Abiodun, why are you not answering my questions? What are you doing?" the king asked in surprise. Chief Abiodun finally spoke up. "I am taking what is mine," he said, his voice stern and cold. "You are no longer fit to rule the people of Ibuji. You are too weak and too empathetic to be king. What our people need now is strength, and so your reign is over." He swayed his sword to the king's direction, who was shocked and managed to dodge his sword, still feeling as though it was all a dream that he needed to wake up from. "What have I done to you?" the king asked with a bitter tone. "You are more than a friend to me. I call you brother," he said, trying to see if he could talk Abiodun back to his senses. But Chief Abiodun continued to strike his sword to the king's direction. The king reached out to the sword he had kept on the floor when he saw Abiodun, not knowing he was the enemy. They fought a long battle, but at long last, Chief Abiodun pierced his sword through the king's chest. The king fell on the hard floor. He muttered under his breath, pointing to the direction of Chief Abiodun. "You are a traitor. I trusted you." As he gave up the ghost, Chief Abiodun stood over his body, laughing hysterically. Prince Adedayo, who had tiptoed into the palace and had watched the battle between his father and his trusted friend from a dark corner of the palace. As cold of shivers ran through his small spine when he saw that his father had been pierced with a sword, he shouted, "Father!" with a loud, shrill voice piercing through the silent palace. They all turned around but could not find anyone. "Get him and make sure you kill him," Chief Abiodun ordered the warriors as they quickly ran towards Prince Adedayo. Few minutes later, after the warriors had left, Queen Morenike entered the palace and saw the king lying in the pool of his blood. She was terrified as she screamed with horror. She ran to the place where the king was lying lifeless as she tried to wake him up. She looked towards the direction of Chief Abiodun. She was shattered. Chief Abiodun sat on the king's throne, laughing wickedly, with mockery in his voice. He watched Queen Morenike in excitement as she wept. Her face was darkened with sorrow and grief. "You are so despicable," she finally said as tears rolled down freely from her eyes. Abiodun laughed the more as he was enjoying the drama. "The king trusted you. He confided in you, and you turn around to kill him because of his throne. You are nothing but a traitor, and it will never be well with you." "Enough! Enough, woman! I have had enough from you. You are beginning to bore me, and I think it's time you go meet your weak husband in the great beyond." The queen did not utter a word as she bent her head downward, holding her husband's hands while she continued to sob. Chief Abiodun stretched out his sword and pierced Queen Morenike. Queen Morenike fell down flat on the ground. Meanwhile, the warriors ran after Adedayo, who tried very hard to run as fast as his little feet could carry him. The warrior ran swiftly to catch up with him as they rustled through the bush with the aim of killing the only threat that they had left. And finally, they caught up with Adedayo. When they came close to Adedayo, Adedayo fell on his knees and begged the warriors to spare his life. The warriors looked at Adedayo with a cold stare as Iremide fired an arrow at Adedayo, who fell on the floor with a loud scream and gave up the ghost. The warrior looked at Adedayo and was sure that he was dead before they left his presence. When the warriors got back to the palace, they told Chief Abiodun that he had killed Prince Adedayo, and Chief Abiodun was overjoyed at the news. He knew that the people of Ibuji would have no other option than to make him the king of Ibuji Kingdom. At dawn, the people of Ibuji Kingdom were thrown into mourning when they discovered that their king and his entire family had been brutally murdered. Men, women, and even children sat on the floor of their houses, wailing. "Our king was a just and upright man. He did not deserve this," Chief Aregbesola said to his wife, as tears of hurt and disbelief flowed through his eyes. "This is tragic. How can an entire lineage be wiped off in one day?" Mrs. Aregbesola replied without expecting an answer. The entire Ibuji people mourned their great king as the farmer did not go to their farms, the market women refused to go to their marketplace, and even schools were closed as school children sat at home and mourned their great king. Since Chief Abiodun was the next in hierarchy after the king, he was made the acting king until after the burial of the king was over, before a new king would be coronated. But unknown to the people of Ibuji, that Chief Abiodun was behind the massacre. However, a hunter was walking along the forest one morning during his usual morning routine check to see if his trap had caught any animal before beginning his hunting proper, when he saw a lifeless boy about 11 years old lying dead in the forest. At first, he thought it was an animal, but as he moved closer, the image became clearer to him, and he wondered how the young boy had gotten into such a dangerous place to get himself killed in the first place. He drew closer to the boy to check his pulse, and to his greatest surprise, the young boy, though his breath was unstable from severe bleeding, he was still breathing, and in that moment, he forgot all about his hunting adventure that day. He rushed to the bush and applied some herbal concoction to his wounds. After that, he carried the young boy on his shoulders all the way to his house in a faraway village. After Chief Abiodun was made to act as the king prior to his coronation, he became restless as he wanted to be made king at once. He didn't see the need for the waste of time. He became impatient and wanted to be coronated as soon as possible. He hurriedly started making plans for the king's burial so as to give him the opportunity to reign. And in no time, the burial ceremony was rushed, and the king and his entire family were buried unceremoniously against the people's wish, as they had wanted a proper and befitting burial for their beloved king and his family. The people were not happy because they were not given enough time to mourn their king, but secretly, Chief Abiodun did not care about their feelings but didn't show it to them. Chief Abiodun heaved a sigh of relief. After the burial of the king, he invited the chief priest to the palace one morning to inquire from him when his coronation would be. The chief priest looked at Chief Abiodun and said, "My chief, the gods has not spoken to me concerning that. He has been silent ever since the death of the king and his entire family. It seems the gods are angry, and all I see is darkness and mist when I try to consult him. But I can't hear anything, and I don't want to make any decision without his backing." "What do you mean you can't hear from the gods?" Chief Abiodun said, his voice rising through the palace. "If you can't hear from the gods, then do away with him," Chief Abiodun thundered with rage in his voice. The chief priest looked at Chief Abiodun with shock and disbelief at what he had just said. "But the gods is supreme and wise. We can't do away with him," he replied with a calm voice. "Then you are tired of your position," as he threatened him that he was going to give his sacred position to someone else, a person more deserving of it. After much pressure from Chief Abiodun, the date for the coronation was fixed by the chief priest, even though he had not heard from the gods. And so, Chief Abiodun was crowned as the king of Ibuji Kingdom, to his greatest delight. 7 days after the little boy was brought into the hunter's house for treatment and care, the little boy's eyelids flickered, the brightness of the room filtering into his weak eyes. His face contorted from excruciating pain. A series of flashbacks of the events that had happened before he finally became unconscious flashed through his eyes. As the flashes persisted, he let out a loud, painful scream which attracted the hunter, who was sitting outside the house. The hunter rushed to the room to see the little boy awake. "Thank the gods you are awake," he said, smiling at him. The little boy smiled back weakly, trying to see if he could recognize him. "Who are you?" he asked in a whisper. "My name is Oyerinde. I am a hunter," he said, looking steadily at his eyes. "I found you inside the forest, almost lifeless, days ago when I was on my routine walk around the forest. But thank goodness you are alive now," Oyerinde said happily. "You need to rest now. Let me give you your medications. We would catch up much more later," he said, patting his back. However, after King Abiodun's coronation, he became an unjust king who rained terror on the people he was meant to protect. The two warriors who connived with him the night the king was murdered were promoted as promised, and they were raised in rank above others. King Abiodun did things that were against the law of the land without caring. He refused to listen to the chief priest who tried to caution him on several occasions. King Abiodun was a very greedy man, as he saw the people of his kingdom as his subjects whom he could enrich himself with, and soon enough he increased the tax paid by the traders and farmers times 10 of the tax they were paying before. The villagers were fed up with all the things going on in the kingdom, as they could barely keep up with the tax increments. But they could not revolt against King Abiodun because they knew he was a wicked man and they didn't want to be used as a scapegoat. When the little boy recovered fully, the hunter sat him down and inquired from him his name and how he had found himself in the forest that night. The little boy introduced himself as Adedayo. He told the hunter that he had been chased that night by some wicked people who had killed his father before his eyes, but he concealed his identity as a prince from the hunter because he couldn't bring himself to trusting him yet, even though he had been nothing but kind to him. The events that led to his father's death had taught him not to trust anyone ever again. The hunter patted his back and told him that he was safe now. "You see, my boy," he said, breaking the silence between them, "I am a hunter and also a renowned warrior. I promise to train you to become great in both aspects if you would be interested," he said while patting his back again. Prince Adedayo smiled and thanked the hunter for his kind gesture and for saving his life. Back in Ibuji Kingdom, King Abiodun continued to reign with cruelty and greed, as he once again increased the tax of the villagers. The people of the kingdom struggled to eat as they were more concerned in meeting up and paying the tax the king had placed on them rather than their own survival. King Abiodun was a tyrant as no one dared to talk to him. Villagers cried day and night in their closets, but none of them could confront him. It was as though they were all hypnotized under his spell. 11 years later, things became worse as the king had a dungeon where he kept villagers that failed to pay their taxes to him. King Abiodun lived in affluence and wealth while his people languished in hunger, penury and want. Things became unbearable for the people. So, one day, Chief Aregbesola and Chief Babatunde decided to talk to the king about how the people felt on the continuous increments of their taxation and that they could barely survive anymore. King Abiodun did not let them finish their statement as he flared up with rage. "How dare you? How dare you challenge my authority?" he shouted with rage. "We are not challenging you, my king," Chief Aregbesola said calmly, "We are only saying that. Shut up your mouth, you fool. My greatest regret is retaining you as my chief since my ascension to the throne 11 years ago," he said with fury in his eyes, "and I refuse to regret any further. From today, the both of you have been stripped of your chieftaincy position. You both will be thrown into the prison for treason," he said as he beckoned on a bodyguard to take them away to be thrown into the prison. The chiefs begged King Abiodun, but it fell on deaf ears as they were dragged out of his sight like thieves. With that, no one dared to challenge his authority ever again. As years rolled by, Adedayo grew to become a strong and independent young man. The hunter, as he had promised, trained Adedayo on the skills he needed in hunting. He also taught him how to fight as a warrior. Adedayo was a very dedicated young man, as he would always listen to the hunter's instruction carefully before swinging into action. The hunter loved Adedayo so much and took him as his child. The hunter also discovered that ever since Adedayo came into his life, it was as though the heavens opened up to bless him, as his hunting ventures prospered greatly, and in no time, he was promoted to the position of a chief warrior in his village. They lacked nothing, as they flourished and lived in abundance. In no time, Adedayo became so skillful in hunting and in wrestling that he was even better than the hunter who had taught him. The hunter looked at Adedayo one day with joy and pride in his voice. "I'm so proud of the man you have grown to become," he said. "Thank you for training me. You are a good teacher," Adedayo said, commending the hunter for his patience and perseverance all through the years he had taught him. But one thing troubled Adedayo: his past. He wanted to move on from everything, as he didn't want to ever return to Ibuji Kingdom ever again. "I have a new life here," he would say to himself, but his heart kept telling him to go back to his kingdom. And soon, he started having nightmares as he saw how his father was brutally murdered over and over every night, until one night, he saw his father telling him to go back to the kingdom. He woke up that morning afraid cause he didn't feel like he was strong enough. One evening, Adedayo confided in the hunter and told him everything about his past without concealing anything. The hunter was shocked as Adedayo revealed who he truly was to him. "My son, you are a brave and intelligent young man, and I don't think you should run away from your past, but rather face it, and I know you will not fail. The gods of your father will protect you," he said as he prayed for Adedayo and blessed him with all his heart. Adedayo returned to Ibuji village, where he rented a small hut there and lived as a hunter. Soon enough, his aura drew people close to him as they felt safe around him, notwithstanding the fact that he was a stranger. He was a very good hunter who would go to the bush every day and come back with multitude of prey, which he shared among his neighbors, who collected the gift from him with gratitude. With time, he began to get information from the people around him about their king without even asking. Mrs. Aregbesola, one of his neighbors, told him of all the wicked deeds of the king and how no one dared to challenge him. She also told him that life had become very unbearable for the people, including her, since his ascension to the throne. She went further to tell him that her husband had been locked in prison like a thief for good 3 years now for trying to talk to him about his deeds. All this she said in a very hushed tone so as not to be heard by the king's spy. Adedayo, on hearing this, was almost moved to tears, as Ibuji kingdom, which was once known for prosperity and peaceful coexistence, was now a den for greed and tyranny. One evening, the chief priest came to the palace, as he had not gone there for years now. The king, who was relaxing when he came, was surprised to see him. The chief priest did not waste any time, as he went straight to the reason why he had come. "The gods have spoken," he said in a calm and steady voice. King Abiodun, eager to hear what the gods had to say after his silence for many years, told him to go on. "The gods told me that the rightful heir to this throne is in this village." King Abiodun's eyes darkened and his countenance changed as the chief priest spoke. "What do you mean by that? We all know that the king and his entire family were wiped out that day during the massacre," he said, frightened. He quickly dismissed the chief priest as he paced around the palace. King Abiodun became uneasy as he called on his bodyguards to find out if they knew of any stranger bearing the name Adebayo that just reappeared into the village. And they returned with the negative reply and told him that there was no stranger bearing such name in the entire village. The king became tensed, and with time he began to have nightmares as he saw King Adebanji chasing after him and almost killing him in his dream one night. The people of Ibuji kingdom were seen across the streets of the entire village, dressed in their traditional attire, as they walked reluctantly down to the palace in small groups. Their faces were gloomy as they whispered to one another in hushed tones, fear vividly written all over their faces. It was their yearly New Yam festival to mark the end of a farming season and the beginning of another planting season. The people of the kingdom gathered together in the palace to thank the gods for a bountiful harvest the previous year and to pray for another bountiful harvest in the next season. King Abiodun sat on his throne as cultural troops danced and performed, entertaining the villagers who watched with rapt attention. After all the performance and cultural display were over, King Abiodun stood up from his throne and told the people that the gods has blessed their land with agricultural products. This kingdom is blessed with numerous agricultural products, he said with a loud tone, his voice echoing through the silent hall. And so, you must all work hard this new farming season to get more harvests. There would be no room for lazing around this farming season, and even the traders would not be left out, as the tax for the next season will be increased 20% of the previous taxes. The villagers looked at themselves in horror as the king continued to speak. Tears of pain flowed silently from some of their faces as the king spoke. "If any one of you refuse to pay my 20% tax increment, you would be locked in the dungeon. A word is enough for the wise. I have spoken," he concluded and went back to his throne to sit. "You will do no such thing," a voice from the crowd shouted. Villagers looked at themselves in fear as they tried to figure out the person who had spoken. "And who is that fool that dared to challenge my order?" King Abiodun said with fury and anger as his face darkened. He stood up from the throne. "I am the one," The voice said again, this time walking through the crowd to meet the king face to face. The once silent room was suddenly replaced by whispers and noises as they talked about the drama that was unfolding in the palace right before their eyes. King Abiodun saw the young stranger who had dared to challenge him and laughed bitterly. "You would live to regret this day, I promise you," he said, beckoning on his bodyguard to take him away from his sight. As the bodyguard moved closer to him, he spoke up again. "You traitor, it will never be well with you. So, in all these years, this is all you could be, a greedy and a cruel king to the people you are supposed to protect. I mean, how are you even supposed to protect these people? You are nothing but a covetous murderer." As he spoke on, the noises in the palace grew as they talked about the accusation that had been leveled against King Abiodun in shock. "Yes, your king here is a murderer." King Abiodun became nervous as he felt the stranger knew too much about him, and it suddenly clicked in his head that the stranger might just be Prince Adedayo. "You killed my father, King Adebanji, and ordered your men to kill me too." King Abiodun's eyes widened with shock and disbelief. The villagers were also shocked but very happy to know that the hunter was Prince Adedayo, who they thought was dead. Their faces lightened with hope. "You child, you are supposed to be dead," he screamed as he reached out for his sword and tried to cut him, not minding what the villagers had heard. Prince Adedayo dodged his sword and brought out his sword as they fought. In no time, Prince Adedayo overpowered him and pierced him through the heart, the exact spot he had watched him pierce his father that unfortunate night. The king laid there lifeless as his body and that of the two traitors who had aided him in killing the king was thrown into the Igbo forest to be devoured by wild birds and animals. The people of Ibuji kingdom rejoiced. It was as though a heavy weight which had been hanging on their neck for years was lifted from them. Celebration swept across the whole of Ibuji kingdom. Prince Adedayo was crowned king of Ibuji kingdom by the chief priest. The people of Ibuji, who once lived in fear and terror, became free and happy again. King Adedayo released Chief Aregbesola and the other chief who had been locked for years. He also released every other persons that were locked in the prison unjustly. Peace and tranquility returned to the village. King Adedayo removed all the taxes that was placed on farmers and traders in the village. King Adedayo walked in his father's stead uprightly and justly with wisdom, but he was always on guard so as not to end up being betrayed like his father. Villagers thanked their gods for having mercy on them and taking away their plague, as there was a ceremony done yearly to mark the end of the tyrant King Abiodun and the beginning of the peaceful reign of the young King Adedayo. Thank you for watching this video. Please help this channel grow by subscribing to this channel. Also, share with us in the comment section what you loved about the story and the valuable lessons you have learned from this story. Like and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Until I come your way again, for now, it's bye.